So we were on a cruise for my company party on Saturday, and my hand had just healed from being all dried up in a matter of 15 minutes. I got every single nook and cranny already split again.
Okay. Now we're close enough, I guess. What's today, the 8th?
It is.
Oh. Call the Planning Commission meeting of December 8th, 2014 to order. Roll call, please.
Present.
Present.
Aye.
Here.
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 Announcements. I have none. Mr. Schneider. Come on, put that hokey education to work.
You just make a Virginia Tech joke there, Mr. Chair?
Being from UVA himself.
Gobble, gobble.
There we go.
The newly vindicated UVA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I described to you in previous meetings that the consultant that did our parking study was also hired to review our sign ordinance. They held a series of stakeholder meetings today. Their team is here. They wanted to make a quick introduction and briefly discuss their efforts thus far. Ultimately, you will be reviewing any recommended ordinance language amendments in the future. So this was just kind of a kickoff to their efforts, and they wanted to come and introduce themselves and introduce the project. So with your permission, they'd like to come and
Carry forth.
So, no? The light guy? Yes, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission.
Hello.
I'm Milton Hurd. I'm a member of the consulting team that's being led by EPR. With me is Matt Rinberg, who's also with EPR, and Barry Carpenter with Simpoetica. And you remember Barry from a previous meeting we had on the parking regulations. As Marchand said, we're engaged to prepare some recommendations and revisions to your sign regulations. And the process is a little bit different than it was for the parking study. We are beginning with a first session today where we did a tour of the town with the staff and had a series of meetings with stakeholders. And now meeting with you to get your input and any issues you want to make us aware of with signs. And then we're going to go back and do some research, analyze your ordinance in light of what we've heard, and prepare some conceptual recommendations. Come back again and meet with you, the Planning Commission, to discuss those. And after that input and your advice, we'll go back and prepare draft amendments and then meet with you again to discuss those. And that'll take place over the next probably 2 or 3 months kind of time frame.
Nothing for me.
Ralph?
I was actually at the stakeholders meeting earlier today, so yes, when we get to our work session, I'll have some comments on that.
Matt?
Just I know a couple business owners have, excuse me, come before the town council and expressed their desire, excuse me, for signage. And I know some of the council members, including myself, have gone to various businesses and heard the same thing. So it's definitely a need.
Good.
Ms. Kerr?
You're preparing the conceptual recommendations. You're going to also present visuals of all these to the board?
There will be a visual component yet to be defined, but we do, one of Barry's specialties is illustration, so we will have a graphic component as needed. Usually, sign regulations usually are limited to sort of diagrammatic, definitional kind of things, but we'll probably go a little bit beyond that.
Good.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Which leaves me. As I'm sure you've already found, I think one of the biggest issues that you're going to have to deal with is the inherent conflict between the business's needs and the historic vision of the town.
Came out quite clearly today.
Yeah. Well, and it's been a back and forth that goes almost to the beginning of time for Haymarket, and you're gonna hear arguments for dimensional increases, backlighting, neon, any manner of things, number of signs, location of signs, off-premise signs, hanging signs, monument signs. It's going to run the gamut, and you're going to hear it all. And I've heard it all for the last almost 12 years. I think what you have to bear in mind is, if you look at it in the context of not only the town of Haymarket, but in the context of other jurisdictions of similar size, and even larger jurisdictions, and jurisdictions with similar historic districts and similar issues between the business community and the Sidon ordinance, you're going to find that our regulations are, by and large, the same as everybody else's. We're a little more strict on some things, a lot less strict on others, but at the end of the day, it's pretty middle of the road, and the conflict is what it is. It's to be expected. It's with any ordinance in any jurisdiction, be it signs, zoning, use, setbacks, whatever. So I'd just like you to keep that in mind. That you have to strike a balance, and if you give the business community absolutely everything they want, then you, in essence, in part, I guess, could destroy the historic view of the town. That's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Commissioner Ring, they weren't staying through the end. I don't know if you were going to make comments on the work session. They're just here at the front of the meeting. They're not going to stay for the parking ordinance discussion.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I actually need to rehash what we all heard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Never mind.
No, I think we,
Moving on. Sorry.
item 9 is work session for parking study ordinance, so,
Okay.
yeah, when we get there, I think that'll be fine.
I'm good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, citizens' time. Anybody wishing to address the Planning Commission, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll close citizens' time. Minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission from November 10th, 2014.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. ARB update.
That is germane to the Planning Commission specifically, nothing right now, but when we do get into the signage, as you mentioned, there's going to be a conflict between what the ARB sees, the historic preservation, and what the businesses see in the zoning conflicts, but that's for a future discussion.
Okay. Mr. Cardinal, anything on the council?
No.
New business, Code of Ethics. Has your name on it.
I realize that. Code of Ethics, as a town council, we met last time. We adopted a Code of Ethics after some pretty extenuous work sessions with Mike Chandler, who goes around the state and talks to local municipalities about the way they do business. We declared those at the last meeting, and it's our desire as a town council that all the boards, of which this one would be included, would abide by those set of Code of Ethics. And the town council, it's my understanding, will be getting with all the boards in the near future to go over those.
Questions, comments, anybody?
I have read through this, and there's a mingling of policy and ethics in here. One of the policies is, I'm sure I can find it, but essentially, it's that Brian is the town manager and everything should go through him, paraphrasing. That's a policy, that's not ethics. Anyway, so it's a mixture of things. I don't think it's purely an ethics issue. I don't think it's purely procedural. And to a certain extent, having watched the town council and heard comments from, I think, both Brian and Mr. Moore said that this would serve as a reminder of what you're supposed to do up here. I actually find that insulting. If you come to sit on a board, a commission, the council, whatever public thing that you do is, and you don't come to that position with the knowledge that you're a steward of the resources, and whether that be a financial resource or property or whatever it happens to be, if you come here not knowing that, then signing this piece of paper won't enforce that. It can't change that. So I don't know that, personally, I don't feel that it serves much purpose. And again, that's my personal feeling.
Right.
If you need to be reminded of why you're here, of why you accepted an invitation to come into this council or whatever body you sit on, if you didn't come here for reasons that were your own, if you came here not knowing that you were a steward, and that really has been one of my guiding principles, is we're stewards. We really are stewards. If you don't know that, if you don't recognize that, if you don't accept that before you sit here in a public manner, then signing this document is not going to enforce, enhance, remind. It's not going to serve a purpose.
I guess my question to you would be, if you come with this basic understanding, what would be the harm in signing a document?
The harm is to mix it sit between procedure and ethics. They're two different terminologies, two different
Understand that.
definitions. There was a recent ethics code change last year, was there not?
No, I think the history of it is that it never got passed.
No,
There was a town council one that they
no,
passed
no.
before they adjourned, and a new council
There
came
was a
aboard.
version passed, well,
Was it May?
there was a version adopted 4 years ago?
No, I don't
Maybe
remember
5?
That long ago. I don't remember that long ago.
It was when Pam was still around.
And also and to amplify that, what's the problem with signing it? Anything that deals with conduct code that's not clearly delineated, that is open to interpretation, as this hugely is open to interpretation, it can be used inappropriately.
How?
It's merely, it is a pure overreach of this board, the ARB, the BZA. The council has its own responsibility to follow their code of ethics and follow proper business conduct. And when we swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and had taken to this job for all the rules and regulations that were set forth by the Planning Commission, we made an oath to that and committed to it. So our commitment to serving the town, with this document, it's not going to change, except it's just more overreach from the town council.
I
If
don't
you-
understand how it's overreach if we're held by the same standards that we're asking everybody else to go.
Well, the standard that we're held to is the oath that we take when we're seated in whatever position we take.
I understand
That's
that.
the standard. To me, that's the standard that applies. And it mimics a lot of this, or this mimics a lot of that. If you're supposed to be impartial, you're supposed to uphold the Constitution, you're supposed to uphold the laws. That's the basic duty that we serve up here. And when you start adding layers on top of that, and it becomes interpretational, it opens it up for abuse. It's that simple. Here we have, I think, the town council may impose sanctions, and there are a number of other things there.
And here's the bottom line for me personally, and as a member of the Planning Commission. Now, if I like the balance of government. As individuals, we may not agree with each other outside this office. Within this office, our sole responsibility is to work together to, eradicate the gap that bridges us together, so we can work together, further the town's initiatives, what's in the best interest of the town.
Right.
I want to keep that balance. And by stating that council has basically God mode over all the different boards, including the PC, I don't see it as fair and balanced. The Senate, U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, and the President's, administration are all separated for that reason alone.
But we're not three branches of government. We are basically advisory to the town council. I think your analogy is not appropriate here. I'm just throwing that out.
No, I understand.
And I don't, I see that we take an oath for the commission, but I think sometimes words have to be stated. Our oath is based on words. It is based on the Constitution. It is based on the documents. So this seems to be a codification of some of what's expected of us. I'm just working this through on
I
some.
think, personally, though, I think the codification lacks a lot. It does mix procedure, pure procedural issues, with what could be conceived as ethical issues. That, from a documentation standpoint, just from a technical standpoint, is problematic.
So where would that be?
The one where it says that Brian's the town manager and everything should go through him,
16,
again, I'm
I think.
paraphrasing, but
16, I think. Well, what's 16?
yeah, 16.
And for the planning commission, this is the same individual who has refused to answer questions on several occasions to certain members of the board, and I'm not sure why. These are simple questions for valid verification that represent the citizens instead of personal interests, which he's taken upon himself. So,
Who are you saying is
I'm
refusing?
referring to town manager Brian Henshaw. But the bottom line is, I think with some changes to this, some clarifications to the misrepresentation and misinformation, I wouldn't have a problem signing it.
Well, I guess my question, where's the misrepresentation? That's the part. It almost seems like it's a vendetta against town manager.
This is the polar opposite. It's almost like a vendetta against other peoples of different boards. We're not looking to create trouble or create a vendetta, you know.
And when we say vendetta, that itself is loaded.
Well,
Because, and
now,
let me just speak.
finish. It's
Okay.
not, I think you're missing the whole intent. The whole intent is to conduct business in an orderly, systematic, and decent way. And I think, having come to meetings in the past, that's not always been the case.
Define what's an example?
I've been to meetings in this room where people were yelling at each other. I'm not going to rehash the past. I think it's pretty well documented.
Yeah, this is a new council.
I understand that.
You know, updated planning commission, you know.
And I would submit to you that irrespective of whether people sign this document or not, when that type of behavior is inappropriate. I absolutely agree with you. If the people are, pick a word, childish enough, unprofessional enough, hate each other enough, there's no lack of hatred, and that's part of the problem here. There's a lot of hate mongering. If people are that emotionally invested in something, signing this document is not going to stop them from doing that.
And the recent example of not disclosing all information for the Dominion power lines that we needed for our 3+ long month report is a clear case that no matter if I sign this piece of paper or not, the same thing's going to happen over and over again, whether it comes from one individual or another. And Matt, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here I approve of, and I think is great as far as, reaffirming, that your loyalties are placed, with the town, to do the duty of become, a plan mission member or, whether you're ARB. These are, when you start mixing in, like Ralph said, the policies and procedures, that's a whole different handbook. It truly is. I mean, you combine 3 different conduct, ethics, and basic procedure, SOP or what have not, in one document. I don't want to go back and forth on this all night, but the bottom line is that things are itemized, split off based on, whether it's ethics, whether it's procedure or conduct. Yeah. Then we can review those. And, we don't have control of it.
Right.
But we could better articulate the meaning behind each of those and just go from there. I just think it's a good step, but I think before really committing to this as a planning commission as a whole, we really need to go through this and put a recommendation to the town council and say, hey, if we split these off in these right categories, we could probably sign off on this.
And if I may, just one more point. The last paragraph, when the town council may impose sanctions, and back to the division of government, There's a reason they didn't apply this to the BZA. Also, the Planning Commission is under guidance from state statute, not just the town council.
I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay. Whereas the ARB is strictly under the control of the town council. I don't know that state code allows the town council to reverse a planning commission decision for ethical reasons. I don't even know that that's legal.
Could you fill me in, please, Matt? Why does this arise at this particular time? What problem in particular gives rise to a code of ethics at this time?
I think past history of the town, there's been a lot of things that weren't exactly kosher throughout the whole town in its past history. So when we met, we sat down as a council. One of our directives, I feel, from the citizens, to be frank, is to clean up the way the town does business. So when we met with the council, we've had several planning sessions. Mike Chandler came in, who, again, advises towns. So we had 2 pretty lengthy sessions just discussing where we've been, where we're at, and where we want to go. And it's just a general, when you have people that come to town meetings and you hear in the community when you interact with them and they say things like, I'll never go back to one again, there's something inherently wrong.
I would agree with that.
So, you know, I'm not here to say he said, she said, but I think the intent is that we conduct business in an orderly fashion. We respect the people that come here. We respect each other on the dais, and the various groups respect each other. And I'm not sure it's always been that case.
I don't think that signing this is going to absolutely ensure that's going to happen in the future. I do think, though, that what you have set up with the preamble is a very good philosophical idea that you stress to anyone who was elected or to appointed positions, that integrity, being true to oneself and being true to what the various philosophical basis of any given board might be, is something that I would think would go absolutely as a sine qua non to belong to any of these boards.
Right. I mean, people violate things all the time they sign. I mean, there's people violate contracts.
Points are made, yeah.
People, and I would agree with that. I mean, just because you sign your name doesn't mean you're going to give everything. But I think it sets a tone of the way we need to conduct business for the town.
And I think that's why the preamble, I think, opens the door to doing exactly that. I think where you run into problems is spelling out 19 particular statements that somehow might ensure.
Hit it right on the money.
Typically, O's are short.
Yeah. And like I said, we're not completely, we're not shooting down the idea completely. It's just really a matter of the approach. When you approach someone to, present yourself and get a loan, you want to present yourself in a manner where you're ready to accept the loan and you have the responsibility to back it up. The same thing applies to this. When you present this document, it doesn't present itself as, oh, it's just a code of ethics and personal conduct. I'm not going to go through each list, but the approach kind of seems out of nowhere, a left field and somewhat threatening, and not completely vindictive, but unnecessary at the same time.
It was never discussed to be threatening. It was never discussed to be vindictive. I sat in on all probably but about 2 hours of the discussion. And the whole intent is to, when people come here, they see government functioning in an orderly fashion. We can staunchly disagree.
Oh, I know.
There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. But it needs to be done in a gentlemanly or womanly manner, not people yelling and getting upset and things of that nature.
And one good thing about this board, I haven't been on an ARB or town council, but since we've added members, since, we started our session at the middle of July, we've come a long way. I haven't noticed any issues at all, except for maybe one person not being able to attend because of personal life issues. But aside from that, I think effectively as a group have been very efficient, open-minded, and, it is an honor to serve on this commission because of the diversity, because of the different ideas, regardless of not we disagree or agree on everything.
Right.
So, I appreciate everyone's input and insight.
And if I may, just to kind of your point, when you said be true to yourself, certainly that's important. But having been a government contractor and having done a lot of that and having worked with a lot of really outstanding government individuals, there is a certain amount where you have to subjugate yourself to the rules and policies, whether you like them or not. And this is just a philosophical, I'm not saying that this is not what you're doing or not what anyone is doing. But frequently, when you join any kind of a large organization or a municipal government, and we're a small municipal government, the rules, policies, regulations that have been set out by that municipality, and that and Bob may get into this is a Dillon rule state, we can do only what the state of Virginia tells us that we can do and no more. And that's kind of what I see here when the town council says we reserve the right to impose sanctions. I don't know that they can do that legally on the PC. Can they reverse a decision? I don't know that that's possible. They may feel that it was a wrong decision. Too bad. If it was legally made, if it was appropriately derived at, that's what the decision is, good, bad, or indifferent. So, and again, some of the best people that I've done business with and that I've dealt with are people that are very neutral, that do not bring their personal opinion to it, or only bring the personal opinion to it after they take into consideration what the policies, the procedures, the statutes, the regulations, that whole thick book that we've got for the town of Haymarket, that has to come first. Personal opinion has to come second. And that's just a philosophical point for me.
Everybody done?
Now your turn.
First off, I don't have any particular issue with the standards of conduct or the implementation aspect of it. However, it seems like it's a one-size-fits-all, sort of throw everything at the wall, and most of it I don't have a real issue with. I mean, is it particularly necessary to put the uphold the Constitution thing in there? We already swore an oath to that, or everybody in here should have. Put it in there again, fine. I'm not going to gripe with that. Same thing with meeting the State and Local Conflict of Interest Act. I mean, that's a statutory requirement. You want to leave that in there, fine. I don't have a real issue with that. Maybe it's just the wording that's throwing me on Clause 2, place loyalty to the highest moral principles. Who determines that? My moral principles? Your moral principles? A former member of the Planning Commission's moral principles? Loyalty is a funny word. Place loyalty to the highest moral principles above loyalty to individuals, districts, or particular groups. I don't know what that means.
I think it's pretty straightforward that we need to conduct our business in the highest moral principles allowed.
But again, who defines it?
I think society defines it to an extent.
If you've been to Ferguson, Missouri, you'd find out that's not the case.
Yeah.
There's a wide discrepancy in that. It's semantics. I think it could be worded better.
We could argue about moral principles all night.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of it speaking, adopt policies and programs that are in accordance with the town's EO policy. That's up to the town manager and the town council, not us. I mean, fine, you want to leave it in there, that's great, but I don't think it particularly applies to us.
No.
No member may disclose or use confidential information without the consent of town council. Confidential information includes discussions during executive or closed sessions. I think you'll find legislatively and judicially, that's not how it works. If we had executive sessions, which we don't, at least not one that I can remember, you're not particularly bound by that, by statute or by judicial precedent, to keep it to yourself. In fact, there is no penalty for disclosing, just for what it's worth. Sherry is the one tasked with ministering to our clerical needs. I'm not particularly fond of adding another layer and having Brian decide whether he wants to have her do or not do what we've tasked her with doing. I mean, she's there to serve a function. We do have an administrative requirement for a variety of things, whether it's publication of notices, meeting agendas, that sort of thing. That's part of the deputy town clerk's defined role. Now, if you want to change the defined role such that Brian's going to be responsible for all of that, fine, I don't care. But we're going to hold him to the same standard that we would hold Sherry in terms of getting it done. There's all kinds of little things like that. Getting to the big point of yours in the compliance and enforcement, and to your question about separation of powers, I guess, for lack of a better term, you'll find that the Planning Commission is a distinct animal within the statutes. Once appointed, you can't be removed except for malfeasance. That is the only statutory power that the town council has over the Planning Commission. It was set that way, and it was set that way for a reason. When the General Assembly created the language for planning commissions, they structured it such that once appointed, there would be no political influence over the Planning Commission. You can't have that in land use decisions. Effectively, once appointed, the town council, or in the case of Prince William County, the county board, has very little, in theory, influence over what the Planning Commission decides or what opinions they render. That's part of what the advisory function of the board is. It's supposed to be, by and large, impartial or beyond the reach of the particular needs of an elected member. So, that being said, I'm not aware of any, I guess gets into the Dillon rule, given the way the statute is structured, I'm not aware of any sanctions that could be placed on a planning commission member above and beyond removal for malfeasance, since it is a Dillon rule and it's the only thing that is categorically stated within the statute under 15.2. So I'm, at the end of the day, malfeasance is that's a really high bar to reach.
Very high bar.
That being said, what is the impact of everybody signing it? I don't know. I mean, personally, I suspect, above and beyond memorializing it, it sort of creates some manner of approval of the entirety of the contents. I mean, I've signed my oath. We've got our bylaws. They cover most of this, if not all of this already, so I'm not terribly inclined to sign off on it. I've signed off on one in the past, but that was as an elected member of council, so. But for this body, it seems like overkill, but that's just my take. We're gonna have a briefing, meeting, something on this in the near future?
That's the intent that I understand.
Could I ask if the town lawyer has gone over this, specifically with Bob's comment about malfeasance in mind and defining it as to whether you could be removed for any other reason? So I would think a legal opinion on this might be appropriate.
That has been determined. That particular question has been asked in the past.
Yeah, and the malfeasance is pretty clear, but malfeasance does not include ethical behavior per se. And then when you're talking about invalidating a decision on the board of a body, whatever that body happens to be, based on lack of ethical behavior, did the ethical behavior really impact the decision that was made on the board? And actually, this is something that you go into frequently in ethical discussions in security clearances and the military and that kind of thing. What you do a lot of times in your private life absolutely does not impact what happens in your professional life.
To answer your question, it's actually found in 15.22212 of the state code. Bearing in mind this is a Dillon rule state, you only have those powers that are granted unto you by the General Assembly and no others. Members may be removed for malfeasance in office, period. Notwithstanding the foregoing provision, a member of a local planning commission may be removed from office by the local governing body without limitation in the event that the commission member is absent from any 3 consecutive meetings of the commission or is absent from any 4 meetings of the commission within a 12-month period. Period. That's it. So missing meetings and malfeasance, that's it. So does that particular enforcement mechanism overstep? Probably. Is it enforceable? Probably not. We've
Could
had
it create all
that
kinds
question.
of legal issues?
Yes.
If it was attempted to enforce? Absolutely. Why invite that?
So, yeah, well, basically, maybe get a legal opinion to clean it up, clean up the wording in some way, or make it
We can check on that.
align with the law.
I mean, certainly, if it aligns,
Statute, not the law. It's just,
I mean, if it aligns with the statute, I wouldn't have a problem signing this, you know. Really, it's just making sure there's that separation between, you know, what we can and can't do versus what's currently written here. So, like I said, you know, my biggest concern was just how everything was just mushed into one pile. I do believe that this is a good stepping stone, and as long as we get that clarification and language updated, I wouldn't have a problem.
All right, well, let me ask you all some questions. Do you think that the general tenet of this document is good?
No issue with it.
I actually do. The intent is not bad, but in that you're adding something on top of the oath that we took, I think is redundant and unnecessary. Personal opinion. The oath means
I have a
something. The
real
oath that I took
problem with
means something to
listing
me.
these particular items. I think the preamble, as I said before, is strong, and it creates a philosophical basis that I would think people would just say yes to.
Well,
And you could put me down as well, Matt. You know, you know, like everyone else has said, I agree for the most part. I just would like to see it cleaned up.
Well,
Well,
but I don't agree with signing a statement like this.
reaffirming and reaffirming and reaffirming. I mean, I see where you're going, and I don't have a problem reaffirming, you know, my oath to this position and my duties, my ethics, and the code of conduct and so forth. It's, you know, like I said, if it falls within guidelines from the General Assembly, then I'll comply. I mean,
That being said, I mean, we can go around and around like this all night, and I'd be
could.
more than happy to argue it all night, but if we're going to have a future meeting where this is going to be addressed and potentially have it amended, let's take it up at that point in time.
I'll take the thoughts back to the council, and I'll get some answers.
Okay.
thank you, Matt.
Marcia, zoning administrator, zoning text amendment.
Thank you. A question had come up last month about two things. One, discussion centered around that references to the zoning administrator extend beyond the definition. Throughout the document, the term administrator and the term council and the capacity of the administrator interchange quite frequently. So the thought was that there needed to be a more thorough scrubbing of the ordinance to find all those references. Second was a question of the amount of time that the commission had to return its recommendation. Did follow up with Chairman Weir about the 100-day timeline, which would have started on October 10th. So the 100 days, basically, as of January, you would refer that, you would need to refer your recommendations back to the council. It's 100 days, I believe, from October, November, December, January, yeah. So I did speak briefly with the town attorney about it. His first question was there something that would not or preclude the commission from fulfilling that 100 days? And I did say, well, there needs to be a more thorough scrubbing of the ordinance.
Clerical error.
What's that?
Clerical error in delaying it 30 days,
I'm sorry?
where it was presented 30 days late.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I guess there's the rule and then there's the exception too. Is I think the intent was to have your work product come back. I don't think the intent was to force you into that box of either deciding or not deciding and not having a quality work product. The reason why they sent it to you was to fix it. What I would recommend is you have it tabled right now. Next month I can come back to you with that. I can also go back to the council and just say, we've decided there's more time necessary to review that language. Would you extend the review period for another 60 days maybe?
I think if you recall, one of my issues was the limited scope that the town manager placed in that text amendment that just didn't make it viable.
By just by just revising the definition.
By just revising that particular singular definition and not addressing all of the other issues that were, it's not just zoning administrator. I don't have my notes from last month with me.
Well, I was trying to encapsulate with that. I mean, there's general references throughout the ordinance.
It doesn't work.
Correct.
It just muddles the picture even more than it already
And when was
is.
the appointment of the town manager and so on?
Well, you've got the appointment of the town manager, you've got, making the wording match throughout the document, because sometimes it's zoning administrator, sometimes it's zoning official, sometimes it's something else in the subdivision sections. So rather than just do a simplistic definition approach that's not going to correct the problem, but rather make the problem worse, my intent, or my suggestion would be do the cleanup, not piecemeal, but do the whole cleanup at one time for all of the relevant sections. And if we're going to run out of time, then my particular inclination, so as not to run afoul of that 100-day limit, whereby it could just be enacted without discussion or without amendment, is to simply kick it back with a recommendation to deny, or to not adopt. But can we put together an amended version between now and then that addresses all of the issues? It's the holiday season. We could.
I guess pushing up next month, there's no further discussion of it. So once we put that together, if we want any additional discussion, we'd run out of time.
Yeah.
So my earlier recommendation.
It should be pretty straightforward, but
I think the intent overall, and let me defend the town manager for a second. One of the challenges I've had since I've started working here is, and this is a function of how the town operated for a number of years, which was limited staff. The commission at one point was in the capacity of the zoning administrator. It was really making do with limited resources. Generally, having a political body administering your ordinances can open itself or give the appearance of influence in those types of things. So the idea was to, again, take a pragmatic situation, because the town had no other option to have that ordinance administered, move it to a true zoning administrator position, which is typical of most jurisdictions. Brian did that. He said, well, we need to get this started. And I said, well, could you please go ahead and start it? And I think part of it was not explaining to him that it's beyond just the definition. So I don't believe it was Brian's necessarily being under-described the task. I just don't think he appreciated how much it was. So that was the
and that's
intent.
fine.
So, but it's indicative of how the town's ordinances over time have kind of been,
You're preaching to the choir on
I'm
this
sorry.
matter, Mr. Conrad.
So anyway, so the one option is, if you want to send it back and say no, I can also take an item to the council next month and say, describe this conversation and say, hey, they would like another 30 days to come back to you, have a comprehensive amendment beyond just the definition. We can do that too. There's several options at the commission's disposal. So,
All right.
but I don't think the intent was to back you against a wall and have you back in.
No, I understand that. I'm just we're caught with the statutory deadline issue.
It was a good catch. Thank you.
Without objection, I think Marchant and I can probably, and I say Marchant, as in Marchant's going to have to review my work, put together a more comprehensive amendment that addresses all of the language. Shouldn't be that hard.
No, I mean, first I went in and just queried Unicode,
Yeah.
queried town council, queried administrator, queried town official, and it kicked them all up. So it's more of a kind of a clerical exercise of finding them all.
That's all it's going to be, is a clerical exercise, both in the subdivision and the zoning ordinance. I suspect we can probably put it together.
Correct.
I just, if there's, like I say, it's as Marchant says, it's mostly a ministerial kind of clerical thing. It's just catching them all, and I'm not real fond of doing it in a hurry, but we'll come back next month and try and hammer it out if there's no objection.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, you did table it. Do you need to take it off the table and move?
No, we can remove it from the table next
Okay.
month. We're not going to take any action tonight, so.
Okay. Do you want me to go back to the council and have them extend that?
In the interim, that would be nice.
Okay,
It gives us a little bit more leeway.
sounds good. Thank you for your patience on that.
Now the fun part of the evening, Dominion Power. Everybody should have the last version I'm authoring.
Did it?
I don't think we have it in the package.
No, it's,
Nobody's got it in the package?
No. So for those of us that don't have a PC with us tonight,
Okay.
We have read it 3 times, though.
3, that's it? I see it in my
they read
sleep.
as much as I did.
Yes.
From December 4th. Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have on here?
you want to do 1 mile notice as well?
Yeah, let's do 1 mile notices while we're here. What's going on, Marchant?
Okay, East Side, John Marshall Commons, that was the mixed use, that was the townhouses that look like, or multifamily look like townhouses, and then other townhouses on the other side of the retail center.
With the traffic circle up front.
With the traffic circle, yes, sir. Again, you guys, I will agree to disagree on the utilitarian nature of a traffic circle.
I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing.
Although I was corrected that a traffic circle is different than a roundabout, for discussion for another day. Nonetheless, Roy Barnett, who was the older gentleman that was here to speak with you, and their council did meet with Supervisor Canlins and the planning staff at Prince William County, and there was a discussion to reducing the density of the multifamily homes that they wanted right on the other side of Pace West, or go to an active adult product. Supervisor Canlin was concerned about the density, and they also wanted more definitive design guidelines to ensure that the project would again, this is a situation where it may ultimately be denied. It's trying to get the best product possible, but more definitive design guidelines so that it would blend better with the town. I don't expect to see something from them for a couple of months. Van Meter is going to go back to the drawing table. They do an active adult product, I believe, in Broadlands and also up in Stone Ridge. So the big concern about that, or the advantage to that, is there's a lot of discussion now about reducing your capital facilities. You know, the amount of resources you have to put to schools and the like. Some argue active adult requires more of fire rescue and those types of things, but generally the concept is you're not generating as much students out of those units and not requiring as much in terms of public services. So bottom line is I'll come back to you with a revised product probably in the next 2 months for you to take a look at.
Cool. Any other ones? I got a call this morning about one.
Which one's that?
Dominion Hunt, formerly something else. Something the town opposed about 10 years ago. I can't remember what the other name of it was on Route 15. Apparently got filed in June or August on Route 15.
Whereabouts?
Thoroughfare. Somewhere around the intersection of Thoroughfare and
West side?
15. East side, I believe.
East side, that would be Villages at Piedmont, wouldn't it?
No, west side is Villages.
East side's UVA, and then the,
So it would be south of UVA, I guess on the other side of Thoroughfare.
on the east side, okay, we're on the west side. I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
I can give Chris Price a call, though, and see what
I think it's called Dominion Hunt. It used to be called something else, but I can't for the life remember what it was. Brook Mead, Brook something. I don't know. It started with a B. They're back again. Have we heard anything on Midwood?
No, sir.
Beautiful. All right. Comp plan.
Could I just ask one question?
Sure.
Where exactly would that traffic circle roundabout, call it what you would?
Okay.
The worst
Wait a minute. Nobody try and get him on their side. I don't want to debate here. Both
What
of
with the
you.
efficiencies and traffic and stuff?
The simple answer is if, you know where the Taekwondo place is? Right in front of that. Kind of right in
Post
front of the
office,
post office.
dialysis.
Oh, all right.
Right in front
Okay.
of that.
That-
Close enough, right there, yeah.
It's too close to Ireland. Should not have them.
Again, there's a distinction between roundabouts and traffic circles. Grant. So,
Don't you get started.
yes, sir.
It's the last discussion I want to have tonight. All right, so comp plan is still on the back burner until we take care of parking and Dominion. I'm assuming Sherry's going to come back out in a minute.
I can jump to my planner report.
Fire away.
Okay. Did take the Carols on a tour of the underbelly of Haymarket. We went back to all the hinterlands of the industrial complex. On weekend, I threw them in the car
That
and
reminds
drove
me.
them around. What's that?
I saw them putting up another antenna array this morning, or this afternoon. On the,
On the rear tower?
yeah.
I saw that. You know, the front tower, they did go through and we did get Joe Barbo and their staff to look at the structural capacity of that. The back one, I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. I think they were changing out the panels,
Oh, okay.
but I will verify that. But anyway, we had a good tour. It was it's amazing. You have an hour that goes away, and just for such a small town, there's a lot going on. For those who I've not taken in the Camry tour, I'd be happy to take you guys on the Camry tour.
There's a problem with his car, too.
Yes. After I took them on the tour, my wife called me and said, "Why did you take the Carols in this car? It smells bad." So it was kind of embarrassing. But anyway, that was a nice tour we got. Today we had the consultants come in. We also met with the Public Facilities Committee to talk about the visioning plan for the Hariver properties. The consultant, which is Barry, the Simpoetica, the gentleman that was here earlier, sitting in the audience. The idea is to take a number of things, take the vision that was put into the comp plan, take the characteristics of the site, do a bunch of other research, and put together some concepts to look at purposing that property. Right now it's planned public use, and the plan envisions trying to use that in some capacity as a park. It used to be we were supposed to move our town offices. We're supposed to go down there at one point. So anyway, it's dusting off the old vision, trying to come up with a phase plan, or what I assume will be a phase plan, if the council chooses to do something with that property. Still reviewing, the rezoning came in for the fairgrounds. They were missing a traffic impact analysis. We had some follow-up discussions. Was the traffic impact analysis matching the development program that was listed on their concept development plan? So I'm waiting for that analysis to catch up before I distribute it. I did talk to Chris Price at Prince William County. He has agreed to send that to their transportation staff to take a look at. Also, schools, I think I told you this last month, to take a look at that. That's a year timeline, so it's unlikely to be for you for a while. One issue we did have during the initial presentation of the concept of the council was a build-out analysis. If the commission and the council were to look at residential on that property, making sure we strike that a balance between the amount of residents that we have, any obligations to provide public services once we cross a population threshold, and making sure we don't eliminate enough commercial land that we need to support our residents in the long term. I don't think the town's ever done a true build-out analysis where you look at the potential square footage and the potential residents you could generate under our current plan. We do have the on-call planning services that will be looking over the ordinances and the subdivision ordinances. That may be a side project for them to look at as well. Going into that, we did hire an on-call planning consultant. It is the Berkeley Group. And again, their task is to begin starting to overhaul the ordinances completely, subdivision ordinance completely. And depending upon when we dispose of the parking ordinance and the Dominion power line, they may be providing an interim update to the plan as well. They're serving as kind of an arm to me, given all the volume of stuff that's coming in. So I did renew the permit for the certificate of appropriateness for the Building 2 on the Winterham property. That's the sister building along Fayette Street. Okay. That was the first floor retail, second, third floor residential. The new ownership has bought that. They're seeing a lot of demand for rental units, and so they feel they have enough demand to move forward with that building. They updated their construction plans to the latest code, and the last estimate was they want to begin construction in the spring, start breaking ground and bring that building out of the ground.
They have an elevator in at this time?
Yes, there was some discussion about how the previous elevator allotment was supplied. There will be elevators per the code. You may have noticed Dominion was out there digging up the ground. Right to the left side of the Winterham house, there's 3 power transformers kind of haphazardly placed. One of them provides power to the house, and the 2 other transformers are to phase the next 2 buildings that are on that. So they're moving forward under their by right, or under their vested plan. Payne Lane across the street, we're providing the initial comments on that. You're going to see in a couple of months the Town Center Master Plan, which is for this property. That was the money that was, remember we did a couple of years ago, some of you may be familiar, we did a master plan to deal with parking, redefining the public space, dealing with stormwater. We actually awarded a contract to RDA, Rinker Design Associates. They've begun designing that based on the 3 concepts that the consultant put together. That will be coming to you as a site plan, but one of the considerations is to do something similar in terms of the lanes that we've done on Washington Street, on Jefferson Street. Not saying entirely 3 lanes across, but something to accommodate a turn lane. In order to do that, and I'm probably saying more than I should right now, but Payne Lane across the street, we would also look at, since they're intending to redevelop that whole corner, would make sense now to work with them to come up with some sort of intersection improvement that can serve all 4 corners.
Do they have enough square footage available to them to avail themselves of that by pushing a building back, or are they constrained by parking at this point in time?
It's in the early stages. I think they're going to meet the VDOT standard for a road width going south on Jefferson Street. They're going to have to give up, I believe, 4.5 feet.
At least.
Just to meet the minimum width requirement, and then it would taper back down to 2 going down to the railroad tracks.
You're talking about 11-foot lanes with a 10-foot turn lane?
You're talking 22 feet,
Yeah.
2 lanes, maybe a little bit more than that.
Like currently, like out here right now, it's 11, 10, 11. So 10 for the turn lane and then 11 for the...
No, right now I think they're looking at a 24-foot wide road.
Okay.
With the 2, 11-foot lanes and some buffer in between. But the idea would be to have them maybe give us more as part of that, or work with them to give us more to match whatever we do here. Thing is, if the council or the commission ultimately decides that wanting to do lane improvements here, it won't do much good if on the southern end we can't receive it. So the idea is now, while this is all in influx, let's get a plan together that makes sense and move it forward.
They're also going to incorporate the Payne Lane improvements, I'm assuming?
Their plan that came in did not show any sidewalks on Payne Lane or widening, so that's a comment that we will have. I believe there's also some comments once on how to try to do on-street parking in front. I think we had toyed around that. Maybe there's some opportunities to do that. Interesting enough, I did get a comment one time, is that all these turn lanes we have downtown, what would it mean to turn those turn lanes into on-street parking spaces? Middleburg seems to handle a hell of a lot of traffic through.
Parking in the middle of the street like it's on Broad Street in Richmond?
Like Philadelphia?
So anyway, in the works, coming through. Having ice rink, we got the ice rink back in. I think I told you before already about Chick-fil-A. Sheets got through the ARB, or actually no, they're coming back next month. It was a good discussion. Did I trump your discussion here? I'm sorry.
No.
Did I go too fast?
No, we didn't actually vote on that, did we?
No, you're right. I'm sorry.
Right, no,
So
we-
Sheets came back in and
There were some
basically,
minor changes.
correct, they submitted anew, but what they did was provide an accounting of all the comments that the ARB, from the last time it reviewed it, so they organized the discussion. They also submitted a comprehensive sign package with that, and which would require amendments to the ordinance, and they also are changing out the pylon sign out on the corner. The ARB asked them to come back with a sample material for the canopy. They don't want to do backlit canopy anymore, but there's some question about color, and then to change up some of the materials they want to do on the corner. It was a very Art Deco sort of sign on the corner that there's some discussion that really meets the town. So that was a good discussion, but once that's done, they'll come back in with their special use permit. Have not heard anything from the firehouse folks, although I did see surveyors out today between the animal hospital and Hunting Path. There's folks out there surveying too. I've had several interests in folks wanting to look at how to develop that land there. So a lot of stuff happening. And you've seen the streetscape, I think. They've got the light poles up our runway is being extended
My
down
God,
through
they're doing
town.
something.
So with the light poles, it really does clean up the streetscape there. I think it'll look quite nice once it gets done. So you saw that across Dottie Leonard's property, there's kind of a whoop-de-doo. At the time that the sidewalks were done, it was claimed that they didn't meet the elevation that was part of the streetscape project. Apparently that wasn't the case, and the driveways were too steep, and Ms. Leonard was bottoming out when she was trying to get in and out of her driveway. So they worked it out with her so that they tore up the sidewalk you may have seen, dropped it down, and should help her with her driveway aprons. So sorry for the rambling report there, but a lot happening. So,
All right.
Thanks.
Let's get back to Dominion. I expect the easiest and most efficient way to deal with this is just go from page 1. You've made some more edits on this?
So, up front, there's been grammatical, spelling corrections. A lot of the formatting has been updated. So, if you see something that's misspelled, go ahead and skip through it.
Why don't you just walk us through the edits, and we'll just take page 1 first. Let's just go with the introduction first. If anybody has any issues with it, now is the time. If you've made any edits, please tell me so I can amend my copy.
And I'll be sending a copy to everyone once we're done tonight. So, we'll have a fresh,
No,
updated
even
copy.
better. Good. Have you made any edits on the first page, first section?
A couple spelling corrections.
Okay.
No core edits.
No core edits.
All right.
Go on to the meeting section. Any issues with any of the meeting sections? Bearing in mind, I added beginning at the bottom of page 8. First bottom paragraph on page 8 and first paragraph on page 9 are additional, although I think that's really only the substantive portion that was changed here. No issues with that? No edits? Substantive edits?
No core edits.
Duty of the PC I didn't touch, so that should be fine. Dominion's process I didn't touch. Factors I didn't touch. First paragraph of root analysis. Not touched. Distribution reinforcements. No changes. Inclusion. No changes. Preferred preliminary route, there were some minor edits. Do you have any further ones than that?
I do not.
Moving through this quick. Alternate preliminary road on page 17. I don't think we made any changes to that, correct?
Everything is as is.
Alternate public input north of 66. I just made some minor grammatical edits in this. Effectively hasn't changed.
Yeah, it looked like it was the same as the prior.
I cleaned up the communication arrays language on all of them so that it gives the right message now. Beefed up the security aspect of that. Beefed up the cost. Any issues on the alternate public input, alternate preliminary route north of I-66? Did you have any substantive edits?
None.
I'm just rolling through this thing. Preliminary and public input, alternate preliminary route, preliminary Piedmont route. This is, in essence, up to the county to decide, not us, but we put it in there now. Western and new road alternatives, that's new. Again, at the end of the day, that belongs to the county, not to us. And For any that are interested, it's my understanding that in the very near future, Supervisor Canada will be having a town hall, given the growth of alternate routes presented. Apparently, the people up on Bull Run Mountain are pretty,
Unhappy?
I think the word bent
I would imagine.
comes to mind. The winery at LaGrange isn't real happy either. So I'll keep everybody apprised of that when I hear about what the date is. They've gotten some community activists have gotten together. They put up a website. If I could remember what it was, I would tell you. Maybe I'll email you the address tomorrow. I've quite frankly forgotten what it was. But I'll get that out to you guys if you want to get a little bit of background on what they're doing. But that's going to become a county issue now. So to the extent possible, I'd kind of like to keep everybody focused on a viable alternative and not arguing, not in my backyard, put it in his backyard, and let's find an approach that the town council can sign off on and the county can sign off on and make everybody reasonably happy, or the least number of people unhappy. Let's put it that way. The evolution of the underground power transmission lines is significantly longer. Any issues with that? Edits, suggestions? And the summary hasn't changed much.
Real quick, going back to centralizing underground power line, power transmission lines, should be on page 26. Where it's stated as a strength, it'd be low maintenance costs. Was that
What are you looking at?
Which paragraph, page 26?
page 26 on the strengths bullet list? It's listed slightly differently in a.
Okay, yeah.
On ours, it's page 29. Okay.
Yeah. So, as a strength, it indicates that it's a low maintenance cost. Wasn't that just proved that it was actually a little bit more costly?
I think if you look at it, you're going to see potentially lower life cycle costs as a strength, and as a weakness, you're going to see potentially higher life cycle costs. It's undetermined.
Okay.
That's why it's in there in both places. There's one school of thought that says it has it one way. There's another school of thought that says it's another way. A lot of it regards technology. I don't know if anybody's real familiar with this, but the way they used to do it up until probably the last decade or so, when they buried underground cables, they buried them in oil. They were in oil-encased pipelines. Oh, yeah, that's how you did your thermal insulation and all of that. That's gone away in recent years. That was one of the particular cost factors in terms of doing repair. It was very time intensive. You had to drain the lines and then replace the lines, refill them, and all of that. They've gone to, believe it or not, a paper-based insulation of late. I know it sounds weird. Okay. Fahrenheit 451 keeps coming to mind.
Yeah.
It's not paper is what they call it. I suspect it's some kind of substrate, but it has made it much more cost efficient, much less time intensive to do repair, fault finding, that sort of thing. As with anything else, technology sort of caught up to the problem, and that's why you see it listed on both sides of the strengths and weaknesses. Anything else? Are we finally?
Could I have both a comment and a question? First of all, this, of course, predates Maureen and my participation in this board, and I think that this is just a tremendous piece of work that Bob, in particular,
Planning Commission, not Bob.
well, that has been done in preparation for this particular onslaught by Dominion. Actually, two questions. One is, why does the SCC, and maybe you can't answer it, disregard lower assessment of people's homes as a contributing factor in this whole discussion?
How to say this politely?
Don't.
It is a question that was asked of them as part of the JLARC study. It's a question the SEC chose not to answer.
Interesting.
The SEC is an interesting body in terms of what they consider. It's much more than just power lines. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that, and by that I mean I don't, the more pejorative sense, us as in the residents of the Commonwealth, because again,
Yeah,
it being a Dillon Rule state, that is a power that has been granted exclusively unto them by the General Assembly, who kind of wash their hands of it and sit here and let the SEC handle it. Why they don't consider it, I don't know. That JLARC study is getting a little bit stale. My understanding is they're just based on anecdotal information from more recent applications, is that while that may have been strictly the case 10, 15 years ago, as the property rights debate has increased in fervor over the last, not quite a decade in the Commonwealth, but it's getting pretty close to a decade, they've become more attuned to it, particularly in Northern Virginia and the rather volatile real estate market. And then you've got other issues in the more rural parts of the state. I think you're seeing that with a natural gas pipeline they want to run through the center of the state. Same kind of situation. At the end of the day, is it something that they should consider as one of their primary considerations? I can understand why they wouldn't.
No,
But
when you say primary, yeah,
It is compromise. Some landowner, whether it's a business, whether it's residential, somebody's going to lose something.
Yeah.
It's almost guaranteed. There is no zero impact route.
True.
You know, it's a compromise at best.
You try to make them whole, but to what extent can that be done? I mean, you get, I think one of the primary examples, maybe Marchant knows a little bit about this. There's a similar issue. It's been going on for probably 2 decades now in southwestern Virginia, where they had a similar issue with a VDOT road that cut across somebody's farm.
Oh, okay.
And it's been in litigation forever, and still is. And the guy was chaining himself to bulldozers or parking his bulldozers in the path and disabling them. So I mean, at the end of the day, the SEC is going to do what they've got to do. I suspect that given the tenor of some of the more recent applications in Northern Virginia in particular, they're a little more inclined than they used to be to require Dominion to put things underground, for example. And at the end of the day, they can do that. If the SEC says, here are all the routes that you presented, and they're all wonderful, and no, you can't build any of them. You're going to put it here, and you're going to put this underground. That's all Dominion. That's the only option Dominion has, to my understanding.
Yeah.
The SEC is judge, jury, and to some extent executioner. So I suspect from the town standpoint, from the locality standpoint, the best approach, I don't know if it's political or just simple common sense, if you want to get the SEC's attention to a particular route or way of constructing the route, the more people that show up at their hearings, the better. The larger the outcry, the better. It's just as I suggested earlier, it's a matter of getting everybody on the same page, or at least a vast majority of the people on the same page, which may be difficult, for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. I don't want to drag this on forever. And this relates to the December 4th, the last email and the last grouping, in which I'm not sure if it was the woman who sent you the initial email or the one that you forwarded to us, saying basically that Amazon might not be showing up, that hasn't necessarily been a done deal yet. And is Dominion still intending to put in this interim Route 55 power line raising up these poles.
Double stack.
The double stack, excuse me, I don't remember the technical terms.
That's a very good question.
When it's obviously only going to benefit Amazon, since the town at the present time has no need of that particular extended or increased power usage. It may down the line, but at the present time, if that's not an issue, i.e. Dominion, and we're simply talking about at some point in the future, let's build an underground line out, on the north side or the south side of Route 66. There's no big rush to do that, since Amazon will not be here, supposedly.
No, I was just going to say, in a sense, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Even if they put up that 34.5 kilovolt double stack line along the Town of Haymarket, Route 55, Washington Street, if Amazon pulls out, that line is an incentive for another customer to come in. So it wouldn't be just limit. And maybe Amazon would pull out, but it'd be prime real estate for them to transfer, lease or ownership rights of the property to another company, because it's more than one company that does mass data centers. And being a very competitive market area in the DC area, I can see it going to another data center if they were to drop it.
Okay, so
I don't know.
You're presuming that let's go ahead and build that line anyway, because it will then be an attraction for.
Well,
But in the meantime,
Yeah.
does it have to be down 55 where we've just created this walkway and we have this,
Yeah, and that this goes back a couple of years. They had an opportunity to work with the town to put lines underground, failed to work with the town, and now that we're about complete with the streetscape, they decide, let's go ahead and run lines down anyway, because they have the right of way.
because they can.
Because they can and
Yeah.
they will. That's just the way Dominion operates. So,
well, they're not called a power company for nothing. They have power, and that's basically,
I think the root of your premise is where we're going to run into a problem. And I've had this discussion with a fair number of people over the last couple of weeks. And if my understanding is, if your question is correct, it's what if Amazon doesn't do it? Much as I would love for that to happen, I have a sense that just based on how vested they are in that site at this point in time,
see what happens.
from a planning standpoint, from blueprints, grading, PASA, stormwater management systems, grading fields, that sort of thing, that I guess it's possible, but the thing that we don't know is what benefits, what variances, what waivers were they granted by Prince William County as part of the economic development package that
Yeah.
brought them there. We're not ever going to know that because they've dropped a veil of secrecy over that. It's like the Iron Curtain. My suspicion is they wouldn't be putting it there without substantial incentives from the county, and I don't know that the county's going to be able to find those, match those incentives for another location to make them whole,
Yeah.
given what they've already got invested in. I think at the end of the day, it's going to go there. It is what it is. They're allowed to buy right use on that parcel. We don't have any say in it. The county really doesn't have any say in it because the zoning ordinance allows them to. So long as the property owner is willing to allow them to construct on that parcel or sell them that parcel, there's not much we can do. I'd love for it to go away and make the double stack go away. I just don't think it's a likely scenario.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's kind of late to the game to ask this question, but that's 1 million square feet out there in Midwood or so.
495,000, 498,000, something like
There's
that.
9 total. And unless any by right commercial will go in there, did they do the analysis, or have they tried to make the argument that any by right commercial development that's not data center would also have the demand for this line, but not the second line?
They have not.
So,
The interesting thing is, and I don't know how, I know that the issue is going to come up, but I just don't know when and how it's going to impact the project. For those that are unfamiliar with the parcel, the Midwood parcel currently has an application sitting before the County Planning Commission, Planning Office. It hasn't been delivered to the Planning Commission yet, for rezoning to change it into
600.
age-restricted residential homes. The reason, or one of the reasons that the property owners did that, almost 2 years ago now, I think, and they went through the process of getting a comp plan amendment pushed through the board so that they could accommodate that age-restricted, was they lost the commercial rights to a good bit of the allowable density on that parcel as part of a density transfer with what is now the Market Center Part 2.
Market Center 2.
Market Center 2, across the street at the Walmart and the Kohl's and potentially a hotel are on. So the question that there's a baseline question the county still has to answer when they build this out is, this is only encumbering what, about maybe a third of the parcel absent the substation, maybe half if you include the substation.
To the Amazon project?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the entirety of the Midwood project.
Yeah, it doesn't take up the entirety of the
It
Midwood
doesn't. It
project.
takes up about, I think, if you include the substation, it takes up roughly half the land base. The question is, since they've already transferred their commercial density rights away as part of a proffer package, do they have anything left? I don't know if they can build anything else on that parcel, but that's not a question for us, at least not at this point in time.
I guess what I'm just saying, you're kind of being up against the rural crescent.
Yeah.
What is the demand for power just for the developments that we would otherwise anticipate out there?
That's the question I asked their engineer, and he couldn't answer.
Okay.
Yeah. I asked that question. Where's the
So-
power going to go?
Well, and you understand what I'm saying, that if this
Yeah.
line is, anyway.
Yeah, their engineer could not answer the question. Yes.
Did want to throw in, Councilman Passanella did give me a heads up that the board is taking action to accept a conservation easement from Somerset Crossing for their
It's a
portion
game
of,
changer.
the right-of-way that would be necessary for the power route along the railroad tracks. So that would be another hurdle, presumably, that if the board accepts that and then the county owns it.
It draws the county directly into it, which they are not at this current time.
So
So
it just makes another factor in the criteria.
it requires county approval at that point in time.
Somerset Crossing owns a lot of land that it can't develop along the floodplain, which follows the railroad track and the Dominion line. So that would just be another, repeating myself now, but it's deliberately done to, I don't know what the right term to use. But anyway, the board is preparing to accept that on the 19th. On the 19th. So now this is part of what I do believe is an intent to connect a trail from 29 to 15. Scott Klein on the other side of 15 with his Villages of Piedmont just put in about 6 miles of trails in and around the perimeter of his project. Presumably that would tie in to the stream corridor all the way out to 15. So that's part of the trail system that Prince William has. So this would just be one piece to do that. What's that?
We actually have those conservation easements covered in one of the weaknesses.
So anyway, that's just a heads up that there are other groups getting in the mix. So,
Cool. All right. Any further discussion? Because I want to put this to bed once and for all. I'll entertain a motion to forward this to the town council with a recommendation for approval, for lack of a better term. I'll entertain such a motion.
With the stipulation that Mr. Maddox is making minor corrections as we speak.
I'm done.
Done?
Oh, okay.
The final version.
I tagged it final, so the email I sent you guys a few moments ago, delete it. I'm going to resend it with the Word version and the PDF version.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to recommend that the council adopt this report and finding and take it as their own, or?
To Mr. Ring.
Okay.
I move that the planning commission approve the report that is in email even as we speak, and forward it to the town council for their adoption.
I second the motion.
Any discussion?
I know at one point I'd asked about adding some sort of executive summary, tagging it with, just stressing basically our last points, what we really want them to take up. I'm thinking, frankly, I don't know how much everyone will read it as thoroughly as it deserves, given all the work that went into it. So appending an executive summary would facilitate for some people somewhere who are reading this and have authority to vote on it, a very clear idea of what we would like.
Well, I would make a comment. We have 3 council members here now. I think they're about as familiar with this as we are. It's not an executive summary is not an unusual piece of a document.
It's one, I thought about it. I gave long and hard thought to that. The problem that I ran into was an executive summary gets really confusing when you start dealing with bullet points, because the differing routes presented have differing weakness. Well, they have many common components. However, the parts that are not common, if you put them into bullet points, quite frankly, will get confusing, I think, because they seem to run at cross purposes. We've got a summary tagged at the end. It's very short. I kept it very short on purpose because I didn't want to rehash. I didn't want to get into the position of presenting an argument whereby you could ostensibly pick and choose from the differing routes. I tried to make this as clear cut as I thought our message wanted to be, and that's why the language is written the way it is for all of the proposed routes, with the exception of the underground route on I-66. I mean, I can write one. I could probably sit here and draft it right now. But at the end of the day, I don't want to. There is so much minutia in here that I don't want the message to be lost. And if you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to read the summary at the end on page 30, the 2 paragraphs, or you're going to read the entire document. The summary is what it is. It's not this, but this, period, end of discussion. It's such a complicated issue from so many different standpoints, whether it's floodplains, whether it's underground costs, my fear is that an executive summary would be 3 pages. And
You're going to lose that,
you're going to lose them there too. That's up to you guys. I can draft one real quick.
I think the other thing is that ultimately one of the consumers of this document is going to be the SEC. That's who really cares.
Yes.
And the SEC certainly is going to be aware of the issues and the complexities far more than we are. It's what they do. So if you're concerned about comprehension of the document by the audience, the intended audience, I don't think that's going to be a problem. The SEC is going to understand what this document is.
And I think, I don't know if you guys were here when we started discussing this, but I mean, one of the baselines that we kind of figured when we were drafting this thing was this document wasn't for us, and quite frankly, with all due respect to the town council, it wasn't for the town council. At the end of the day, the document as written is more for the SEC than anybody else. It's done so the town council can adopt a position, adopt a resolution, and that. But at the end of the day, Ralph's right. The people that are going to ultimately make the decision, whether they see this or not, really doesn't matter. But they're the one. I mean, that's who it's written for. It's written for their potential review and for their potential arguments and their weighting. So.
What would be the harm where page 30, it says the planning commission does, however, support the public input alternate preliminary route north of I-66, provided the transmission lines are constructed underground, as suggested in the interest of the public health, safety, convenience, and welfare. What about just putting that in bold print? What kind of make it stand out? So if
I have
you're
no issue
looking
with
at the
that.
summary, really, that's
That's the key phrase.
that's the key phrase of the whole summary. So when somebody looks at page 30, that's the
Got
main thing that we're trying to convey.
I've got no issue with
In
that.
essence, it's an executive summary in a sense, because you bolden it. Kind of takes what you said, Bob, as far as the minutia,
Could you catch the exact
and what you
sentence?
said, and just kind of,
Catch exactly what you meant.
I think you could break it up, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, just break it up in two. I mean, I would suggest you break it up in two separate motions. The first part is we forward this report to the town council for review and recommendation or review and adoption. Furthermore, based on that analysis, we recommend that of the options analyzed, we recommend,
We've already forwarded a resolution, right? Last time. I
did
don't
we?
think the resolution changes, does it?
Oh, I'm sorry, never mind.
No, there's already a resolution been
But
forwarded.
anyway, just, I think what Matt was saying earlier too, just now that you're formally adopting it, and as reiterated in our resolution, the preferred route is that route. I agree. Just want to make some statement when you send it to the council, so that when they get this next month, they say, okay, here's what this report is. So rather than going to page 30, they can just say, okay, they want us to adopt it and review this, but basically the bottom line is go underground. So,
Or the council can certainly add that, or make that modification to the report, or add it in executive summary, depending on what they want to stress. Again, more for your benefit, we make recommendations. We make no decisions. It's not our job. We simply make recommendations. If the council wants to throw this thing away and write their own, they can do that.
Yeah, I see the minutia as an incredible blessing. The depth of research is terrific. But I also see it as basically a difficulty for somebody coming into it who doesn't. And I'm thinking the SEC, I don't know the personalities. I don't know their full-time job. And that's why that was my idea. Now, the bolding is another route. I like Marchand's, I like his middle route, one only because I see it sort of streamlines for very busy people. This is what we've come to agree to.
yeah, I was suggesting just creating the trail. You did a resolution last month. This month, you're revising the amended report, and then you're just putting in your motion that goes on the record. Hey, we know there's a report we got to go find. If I'm Joe Public coming in, I say, okay, you put this report together, but you just put on the record that based on that, you continue to recommend the underground route or something to that effect.
Do you withdraw your motion?
Or can I just modify it?
Go ahead.
Sure.
I think I can just offer an amendment.
Okay. Trying to be helpful here.
Can I just say what he says? I so move.
Do you want to say it again? That you would recommend that you forward the report and finding of the Town of Haymarket Planning Commission regarding the Haymarket 230 kV transmission line and substation to the town council for review. I don't think we want to say adoption, do we? Let's say review and consideration.
Well, no, I think we do want to recommend that they approve it, and recommend it for adoption.
I guess what I'm saying, when they approve it, what do you want them to do if they adopt it? What do they do with it? Include it as part of their?
No, again.
There's already a resolution that they've got that's been forwarded. I think the attorneys are handling, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and again.
You got to remember, this is coming back to us for revision.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was out of the order.
Right.
So I'd say-
What they do with it after they adopt it is up to them. We're just asking essentially for them to acknowledge that the report is accurate and correct and move forward with it, and politically do whatever they want to do with it.
So review and adoption, and you say, and trying to say, because this is more or less a revised report is what you're saying.
Correct.
So then you just say, and furthermore, we, based on the revised document, we continue to recommend that the underground route be the preferred route, something to that effect.
Right.
And also, I think Matt's idea of the bold is terrific.
Make it bold.
Because it basically draws the eye right to it.
First paragraph of the summary.
Yes.
First paragraph, first sentence, the first sentence starting with the planning commission does.
Summary, consideration of the final fiscal, that one?
Planning
Secretary,
Oh, the planning,
The planning commission does however support,
all the way down to where the planning commission recommends, don't do that one, because that's just,
was that all bold?
just that entirety of that first sentence.
You guys can pass it, it'll take me a couple minutes to send.
Okay, Sherry, do you have that?
Do you amend your second? Mr. Maddox?
Forward to the council for review and adoption,
Right.
and the.
And recommend.
Yeah, the recommendation, or what's the 3 words you want to use?
No. Okay, so forward to the council, forward that we approve it, forward it to the council for their adoption, and that we recommend the alternate route on the
It is the,
north side of 66th.
it is the
With the underground
public
option.
input alternate preliminary route north of Interstate 66, provided the transmission lines are constructed underground.
Underground.
There you go.
Okay, I think that's it. Second.
I
You
second.
amend your second.
I amend my second.
Okay.
2 seconds.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Yes.
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 That passes unanimously. I'll entertain another motion. Oh, no, I can't.
You cannot. Not yet, we're not done. Okay, I'll be concise. We're on option 9 now, I believe?
For what?
Or not option 9, but item 9?
Yes, item 9.
Yeah, item
I
9.
want to get it over with, yes, I
Yeah,
know.
okay. No, and this can be fairly brief. I don't have to rehash the entire hour-and-a-half meeting. Zoning text amendment parking study ordinance. Essentially, we had a meeting today with business owners. Pam Swinford and myself were there for the town and the planning consultants that you saw earlier. Essentially, the problem that the businesses have with signage, and that's what this is about, is that a business cannot be identified from the street by signage alone. And that's pretty much universal. And we have a couple of options. So one of the people that were here was Piedmont Tire. What they're saying is their signs are too small. If you're driving at 25 miles an hour, there's a number of distractions, et cetera. You're not going to see the sign that they've got on the side of the building. If you're in Winterham, all the buildings that face the street, the building, by the way, if you didn't, there's even a bathroom that faces the street. They had to block that off. But if you're down that L, you're hopeless. You can't be found. You cannot be identified from the street. The guys are back in what we're now calling the Haymarket Industrial Park. There's no way to identify those people from the street. So the businesses are essentially invisible from the street. That's particularly from a moving vehicle. And I won't go into all the reasons why that is with the signage regulations that we have now. And one of they were really quite hostile to the concept that this is a walking town. They cannot survive on pedestrian business. There's not enough. And the guys over there, and just as an example, Piedmont Tire, trying to be business friendly. I'm waiting for my car to get done. Where can I eat? I've heard of Giuseppe's. Where is it? Right across the street. Can't see it for the signage. Cupcake Oven. How do I get there? Well, you got to kind of, since you can't walk up the sidewalk, you kind of walk around the back, and there's no sign out front that says Cupcake Oven. And if you take a look closely at the signs, you'll see that, this really is pretty apparent, particularly from a moving vehicle, even at 25 miles an hour. Realistically, a lot of these businesses are utterly invisible. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So they had a lot of recommendations. So essentially, as kind of came up before, how does the town administer I'd like the 24-foot neon sign lit up 25 hours a day, and but we have aesthetics to maintain. Where do you get in between? How do you accommodate the businesses, and how do you maintain the town facade that you'd like to maintain? That's the big issue. One of the things that came up, and we talked a little bit in depth, the concept, there's no way to advertise every business in town. You can't do that. So what you do is create a destination. just like Fair Oaks Mall or Tyson's Mall or something like that. You can't list the hundreds of stores in the mall. But if in the town of Haymarket you create the destination of Winterham, and you put a sign out there essentially that says Winterham or something like that, somebody driving down the road, if they've been told, you know, my business that you're looking for, that you're driving to pick up my flowers or to pick up the food that you're, go to Winterham, okay? Got it. Same thing with the industrial park. Find a name for the industrial park, you know, so that you can create a destination. Then you'd also like some signage up front, a lot of other things. But essentially the big problem is that whether you're walking or, because walking has its own problems, whether you're walking or whether in your car, you're invisible. And I believe that there's legitimacy to that complaint. So the question is, how do we resolve that? Consultants are going to come back and give us some options.
Let's deal with the parking aspect now.
Parking.
Parking.
Let's go to parking.
Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. Last month, we had, and there's two parts to your packet. The first, well, actually, there's three parts. One was the summary memorandum. Next was the comparison of the parking ordinance with other jurisdictions. One of the issues that came up in that comparison is we had a parking ordinance that just dealt with a series of uses that we didn't otherwise permit, like hospitals. It was very generic, kind of a generic standard. Then you had uses listed within each zoning district. And then we had other uses we've not even envisioned at all. So the idea was to try to go through and capture all of those elements. What I'd like to do, maybe given the hour, is go through the actual proposed ordinance. I found some issues that the commission may want to look at as part of that. Unless there's any other questions, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to kind of go down the line.
Let's take a quick walkthrough through it, because I've got some real issues in the chart.
Can you talk about on page 9?
Starting on page.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the thing.
Actually, starting on page 9, yeah, page 30. It gets to your earlier statement about uses that we don't even contemplate.
So I do have some background on some of that, so as we go through it, I can hash it out. So the goal at the end of the day, and I think some people misunderstood, is that, you know, we're in a conflict with the walking town versus we don't have on-street parking, we don't have municipal parking, so we're driving everybody off the street. So at one point, do we eat up more land with parking than we do buildings? So in that regard, the other problem we're going to have, too, is most of these buildings are going to be built out at some point. But I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, let's go through.
Yeah, I think the text is fine. We don't have any issues with the text, the very minimal text we're dealing with. 58-11A, everything's been struck except that first sentence, and then you've got the definitions. Anybody have any issues with that? Because I certainly don't. And I like it nice and simple. Being said, let's get straight to the chart. And it starts on your page of the packet, page 29. I don't have any particular issue with any of this table of parking requirements on page 29. Does anybody have any other issues? Marshall?
Okay, real quick, page 29. Okay, single-family apartments, multifamily, we don't have a product for that. We got rid of our R3 district a while ago. This was in anticipation that if we ever came up with that product.
Still have apartments above existing apartments. So.
Correct. So the standard below that is apartments on the second floor of structures designed for commercial use. That's how we list that accommodation in the ordinance.
Then I would suggest striking apartment multifamily as something that doesn't.
Now, the only interesting thing is apartments on second floor. We have a lot of buildings that have apartments on the third floor. So.
Yeah, and they're going to, what are they coming up with for the parade ground? I mean,
That's townhouses.
Strictly townhouses?
Correct.
So we would do apartments above the ground floor of structures?
Yeah, it's going to take a zoning text amendment because we have to change the.
That's what we're doing.
You want to go ahead and change the district reference as well? In other words, this is the use right out of the zoning district for B2 or B1.
How many third floor apartments do we have?
Winterham. And.
Those are condo. Those are all two-story apartments, though, right?
First floor retail, second, third floor residential.
But the second and the third floor are all one unit, right?
No, they're
They're
separate
not?
units.
does it always come back to Winterham?
Hey, Marchand, on this fairgrounds, you said it's all townhomes now, no businesses up.
I'm sorry. The rezoning only applies to the back half. They're lobbing off the back half. The rest of it will stay commercial in Washington. They want to do 120 townhomes.
Well, if Winterham's only the exception to the rule, and it's already built, and it's an existing circumstance, I would just say leave it as is and strike apartment multifamily out of the table entirely.
And the point being, again, is we don't have an R3 district that would allow standalone multifamily.
Any objections? Okay.
Elderly, independent, and active adults, we currently don't have a product for that in the sense that we don't separately list it. If it came in as townhouses or single families, maybe we would allow it under that, but just the use would be different. But does that make sense what I'm saying? So I don't know that we need to necessarily separately list elderly or independent living to be a residential use, but if we want to distinguish them for the purposes of parking, maybe we leave it in here.
I think so, because they do, typically, assisted living, your residents don't have that many vehicles. You do need parking for your staff, and you do need parking for visiting family, but it is a lower requirement for parking than almost any other usage.
Yeah, some could argue
I don't know
that.
if we're ever going to have that product in town, but
Yeah, some could argue elderly independent is a commercial use, like a business, versus active adult, which is considered a standalone product. It's just you restrict that to folks over.
But again, for businesses, I mean, for your dwelling, because it's still a dwelling unit.
Well, that's my point, is that
But,
do we want
I
to,
mean, and really, you're not looking for much parking.
Anyway, there was
Assisted
still a potential for them putting that at Winterham at one point in time, and there was a discussion of that, so there has been interest of it in the past, so.
down here on Washington Street by the animal hospital property I was talking about earlier, there was some talk about maybe on the back side of that up against where I live in Long Street, is doing like a duplex or something else that would be a product toward older
For assisted
populations.
I'm fine with leaving it there.
Okay.
Accessory apartment as defined, what are we defining as an accessory apartment? Do we even allow them?
Okay, look in the definitions behind, at the back of the list, you'll see a list of definitions. And we do separately list that in the R1 district.
We do?
Yep.
Oh, because of that goes back to that change in statute where you had to allow the mother-in-law pods.
Yeah, the in-law suite.
Yeah, well, yeah. you know,
The only thing I can think of is behind A.C. Watt's house. He has that garage, and there's
Yeah,
some
but
folks in it.
we're required to, if anybody wishes to, in essence, drop a pod in their backyard to handle their disabled or elderly parents by state code, we now have to allow that. So, yeah,
I mean, we already had it in our ordinance, but
it's already in the ordinance, yeah.
Correct.
We made that amendment several years ago.
But that's, are you talking attached to the in terms of the definition, attached to the physical structure or attached to the property? Because it is
are you looking at the
standalone
definition?
It can be either way.
Yeah, typically, subordinate to the main or primary use of the building. So in the definition here, it says it would have to be attached.
I don't know whether that's going to meet
Yeah,
the requirement of the state code, because that's where you get into that whole argument about.
I will look it up.
Pod-type structures.
Yeah, I think if we scratch attached, we'll be fine.
Yeah, we want to take a look at that, and we'll just
Yep,
bring it
I'll
back
look it
next
up.
month. We'll bring it back next month with that. Yes, Dr.
I'm gonna,
Grammer.
am I allowed to start calling you Bookworm Commissioner?
Forgive him, he's got that tech degree, you know.
Means a dwelling unit that is attached and subordinate. Where's the spelling error?
Accessory.
ACCESSARY.
What's wrong with that?
That's how they spell it in Blacksburg?
Josh didn't go to Blacksburg.
Are you back to that?
Okay.
Group homes, do we even allow them?
Yes, it's a permitted use in the R1 district and R2 district. Home occupations, we allow them. You've handled a bunch of special uses. This would just basically say that if you look at the top of the list, we say single-family detached or attached has so much per unit. This would be in addition to that. The only thing that's here is, right now, our home occupations don't allow non-resident employees.
They allow family members members to be employed. Does
Correct.
the family member have to be resident? Is that specified?
Yes.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You and I talked earlier about Mary Maids, and the one
Yeah.
relative does live there. I believe,
Oh,
well,
okay.
yeah, well, on a part-time basis, but has resides there.
So we don't allow non-resident employees.
No.
So if we strike that, if we just strike the +1 per non-resident employee, we'd meet the existing code, town code.
I think I want to change it to say 1 + 1 per, because we allow teachers as home occupations. So if you're going to have a student come play the piano or something like that, you want to have,
okay.
you want to have space. So let me tweak that to speak to either a customer, let me find some other language for
So
that.
just leave it at meet the residential requirement +1,
Why change it?
period,
+1? Okay.
+1.
Okay.
Just leave this +1.
Just leave it as +1, it's easier that way.
Hotel, motel, Holiday Inns. I'm sorry, that's a rap song. We do, actually, come to think of it, I don't think we allow it. This was a carryover in the old off-street parking regulations.
I thought we were actively seeking hotel, motel, lodging.
The flags that we're looking for aren't the same as what a hotel and a lodge is. Most motels are defined as they have exterior opening doors. Most hotels have interior doors. So let me double check on that, but I don't think we even allow that, so that's probably something we need to strike. Let me follow up on that one. Okay, bed and breakfasts, we do allow that in the residential districts. Medical clinics, we have a generic definition of office. I think this would allow us under office to say if you're a medical office, you would have to provide a higher standard. It's generally recognized that medical office generates more than a standard business office.
I
So
would
I
actually, I'm not comfortable with 1 per 250 for that, just given the volume, but maybe I'm wrong.
no, I can, there's a comparison chart in here. I can look at, let's see what the others. Prince William was doing 150. This is on page 2 of the report. I don't know what it is in the packet, but it says what some of the other jurisdictions. 4 per 1,000, 3 per exam room. There were some other standards there. I think just for making it easy, we came up with 1 per 250. Bob, did you find that?
Yeah,
Any
and
analysis?
it seems to me that everybody's got a lesser, well, the majority, I think we could split the difference and do it at 1 per 200. Would be my suggestion. No objections?
No objection.
Okay. Part of the reason why retail is split up in 3 different ways is because that's how we categorize the old ordinance. But the first one is just your generic retail store. That would encompass, there's listed in the ordinance, but basically most of what we see in town. Other low-intensity commercial uses and personal service uses as defined. I was having problems earlier finding the definition for that. Oh, no, there it is. That means a commercial use that is permitted or permissible by this ordinance but is not otherwise defined and does not exceed 0.3 floor area ratio. So it's kind of a catch-all if we found something that we couldn't define.
Okay, I mean, real serious minutiae here. Did we ever define what a parking space is?
Defined by building code.
How large it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it require striping? Do you know?
Yeah, it's part of your facility standards manual, yeah.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the building behind us. Just jumped to mind.
What's that?
Is that striped? Is it designated? Is there anything in terms of marked parking back there?
Not in the gravel lot, no. Well, no, there's some wheel stops back there, but not across the balance of the lot.
Yeah.
We have stripes on the asphalt and then
We're
wheel
there,
stops.
yeah. But, okay, as long as the parking space is defined In the building code, we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Because
I
I've
guess-
seen parking spaces vary hugely over the years.
But there is a minimum standard.
Okay, that's fine.
So what this does, you have three standards. You have kind of your generic retail store, then you have this other category at floor ratio of less, and then you have this other standard for shopping centers. I think it needs a little more work to make that clear. I can try to clean that up a little bit. I think they were trying to use it as a catch-all. What we used to say in the old parking code is if you were before this date of 83, you were X. If you're retail, you're Y. Any other commercial business, you're 200. So let me try to take a stab at that and clean it up. Food store, grocery store, or supermarket, that's a use that we list, and we exclude quick service food store.
You know my question on the next category, do we allow them?
Was that funeral home?
Yeah.
Yes, we amended the ordinance to allow them. The gentleman chose never to go through with it.
But the ordinance wasn't acted?
Yes.
Right, and we made the egress, ingress was the problem, not the use itself.
I remember. Okay.
The next one,
You're going to strike sales and/or?
yes, we don't want vehicle sales.
Prohibited by code, correct, still?
Correct. Also, we would probably want to strike outdoor sales and storage area,
Yep.
presuming that that would be part of sales. We have
Well,
outdoor
you
sales.
know, indoor display, that's got to be gone.
No, that's Piedmont Tire and Auto. If you go in Piedmont Tire and Auto,
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay.
so I think we want to say is motor vehicle repair and indoor display. That's Piedmont Tire and Auto. Do we want to allow any? Well,
You don't want outdoor sales and storage, no, so you would strike that section as well.
service area we would probably want to have. So fuel retail sales would be sheets. What's a little confusing about it here is it seems to say, in addition, I'm not sure what the parentheses in addition to pump spaces, I was trying to figure out what that was. But basically it's one per fueling position.
Yep.
We'll probably need to look at what happens when they have service. Maybe it applies above. In other words, you would
Do we
add
have fuel with service currently? No, we don't.
sheets. Oh, no, fuel with service? No.
No, we don't.
But it would be basically if someone wanted to come in, there'd be one per fueling position. In my mind, fuel with service would mean 2 per service bay as above. And then the sheets example, you have the sundry store, it'd be fuel with convenience retail. So you'd have
So
three
you just want to
standards.
put in 2 per bay?
For the fuel with service, yeah, in that line.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but you're gonna need more than that, because if you're storing cars overnight, there is storage.
Yeah,
And two per bay is not gonna do it.
no.
The way that was set was they did 1 per 200 for the whole project.
Right, and that's fine, because they don't, I mean, they're just drive-through, essentially. Well, not drive-through technically, but.
Okay,
Why don't- Come up with some language for that.
which talks about outdoor storage of vehicles that are waiting for repair.
Yeah,
Yeah, waiting for and have been waiting for pickup.
but nothing too,
But not for sales.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving quickly, nursery garden center, we allow that in our
Why?
conservation districts.
Oh, we do?
Was that?
We still do? I thought we
Yeah.
took that out.
No,
Okay.
it's still there.
All right.
Office, we already talked about. Quick service, that's basically a convenience store, which I need to, we also have fuel with convenience retail, then we just have one like a 7-Eleven. So that would be the differences there. Recreational uses, these were simply added to expand on our sportsplex uses. Do we even want to, I don't even know how I would define this, to be honest with you.
Much as I would like a billiard parlor, preferably one with a smoking area, boy, can I hear the screaming now when that application gets made.
I think we want to keep the fairground, carnival, and circus, because that's a special exception use that we list. But as terms of billiards, bowling alleys, retail areas, restaurants, you know, if they were to come in today, I don't know that I would have a use type that would allow them to even come in. So I'll leave it
Same
up to,
token, do we need court sports facility when we've got it better defined in the next section down? In the public recreational facility?
correct.
I mean, I would strike court sports facility. I mean,
What about the ice plex?
That falls under the public recreational facility or club, commercial indoor fitness.
Next section down.
Oh, they're at a private one instead of a public use.
You're going to strike court sports? Okay.
Yes, I'll strike court sports, sorry.
Do we have enough land other than the fairgrounds property for a
Josh,
for
I'm gonna
mini
get back to
golf or a driving range?
I don't even see a permitted use in the ordinance.
Strike it, please.
You know, I'd use it, but I was tempted a joke there. What I need to go back and look is what, I think the commercial indoor, Josh, to your next one down says public facility or club,
Yeah.
or, there's a semicolon there, or commercial indoor fitness and sports activities. And I guess the question was, do we want to break up the types of facilities?
Not particularly.
No, it's defined because you have public and you have club, which defines private.
Correct. And then indoor fitness and sports activities, our zoning ordinance already allows a certain amount of accessory, so that would take care of the retail area above. That make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then the bowling alley, yeah, I don't see how we don't want a bowling alley in town?
Why not?
I'm willing to leave it there if we can get one to come in because they're a cash cow, but
I just don't know where
where you'd put it?
yeah, I don't know what I define it under. Let me look that up and I'll come back to you. We're striking mini golf driving range.
Yeah, there's no sense.
There's nowhere else for that to go.
Much as I would love a putt-putt,
What about mini golf?
I know.
I want to be able to hit my ball through a windmill, right?
Active
Hard-
recreational uses, we do have parks and playgrounds.
Hard courts, I guess we could leave it in there.
To be honest with you, if we come up with a hair-over plan, we'd be imposing the standard on ourselves, presumably.
Okay.
So,
Do we need swimming pool, though?
I would leave it.
Okay.
You could conceivably,
I mean, just because it's on this list doesn't mean it would necessarily get approved if it was submitted, correct?
no, I think part of the issue is if it's not a use that's otherwise permitted, why have it?
Standard?
Why have it in the ordinance? So we do allow an indoor pool, though. I believe we would
Okay.
allow
So
that.
let's say on the Haribo property, we wanted a mini golf for the
See?
kids or whatever.
I'm with Matt here.
Then we're
Okay, then just take out driving range.
there's nowhere to hit 400 yards in town.
66.
60, yeah, aim for 66.
On the south side where they're not the power,
down that power line.
What a divot.
very narrow fairway.
Cool.
But
I want to say that's wrapped up in this definition. But, okay, I'll keep that in for now. Driving range, yeah, we don't have any land to do it. Retail accessory use, this is all under recreation uses, I assume. We already talked about that above.
Yep.
So that seems repetitive. So let me take that out. Okay. Now, the next one with regards to restaurants. I couldn't honestly tell you the difference between a freestanding restaurant with drive-in or a fast food restaurant with drive-in or the other ones. For some reason, our ordinances list them separately.
And since the standard's the same, what is it?
Is the standard the same? It's just saying, when we fix our zoning ordinance to kind of figure out why we have these dual uses, then it'll clean itself up.
What's the inline line?
That's where we allow pharmacies to, we allow a bunch of those
Oh, okay.
commercial uses to have a drive-through.
Okay.
Outdoor craft shows, farmers markets, we allow those by ordinance, so I was developing a standard for those. Kennels, same thing.
We don't allow kennels, do we?
It has to be internal.
Internal to the
so
veterinary practice.
So Haymarket, or the animal hospital down there has a kennel, but it's interior. Theater or similar establishments.
I don't see one coming, but so long as the fairground property is available, we might as well leave it in.
Well, to me, it's like if the fire station got turned into a theater.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Be interesting. With the-
Any other commercial use not otherwise listed? This is kind of a fail-safe to the retail I talked about earlier. I got to try to mesh those because that didn't really make a whole lot of. Okay, jump into institutional uses.
Is that school one enough?
Was that,
Cover admin?
excuse me, I'm sorry?
Is that enough to cover admin?
Schools, public and private?
Yeah.
Only if you argue students are in the administrator's office often.
I lived there as a child.
Okay, then it's covered.
Bob's
It says, or other room used by students.
Above the driving age, I thought it's a driving range. What? If you look on page 6 of the report, it has the analysis of schools. Prince William broke it out between high school, I guess.
Granted, we're not going to have anything in the upper tier, at least I wouldn't think so.
We're just seeing the proliferation of preschools is what I really see happening, so. So we seem to be following, on that list of comparisons, we seem to be following the Loudon example.
So what do we do with Pace West? Are we, in theory then, saying this is square footage is office and this square footage is retail and this square footage is educational?
Correct.
And holding them to those multiple parking standards?
Unless they file for a shared parking plan, each one would be held to its own standard.
Okay.
And that's, the time that they went in there, it was 1 per 200 for everything.
Okay.
Municipal building, this would obviously apply to us, which I think at that rate, our current master plan would meet. Other public uses, one could argue that would maybe be something with the Hanover, the museum across the street. The next one, we may just want to enclose under 1 that says places of assembly, private clubs, lodges, or meeting halls. You do see the footnote there which talks about our LUPA. And essentially, under the law, you are supposed to consider any place, anywhere you allow a place of assembly in your ordinance, you should also allow a church. But we separately list churches, private clubs, lodges, and meeting halls separately. So that's why they're listed separately here. Okay. Almost done. Self-storage center, mini warehouse. We have that in town, although it's not a use defined. I'm not sure how many more mini storage we're going to get unless they want to convert south of the railroad tracks eventually to something like
Which is
that.
a possibility, one would assume.
So maybe we'll leave that in for now. The rest of those uses that are listed, except for the last one, office space, those are simply uses that we list in the ordinance right now. Shared parking. So one of the parking study was 3 things. 1, developing the standards for the uses that we allow. 2nd was coming up with a shared parking. The 3rd would be an in lieu parking policy. That would be something you would address some other time. Before you address that policy, you would want to make sure, did the town want to start providing municipal parking, if that makes sense. With a shared parking would basically mean if someone wanted to come in with multiple uses, like the fairgrounds or something like that, they could come in with a unified plan. Presumably, residential behaves differently than commercial.
I'm going to excuse the town clerk for weather-related.
Okay,
Okay, cool.
what's going on?
Have a safe trip.
We already have snow where I live on the mountain.
Okay.
It's coming this way.
Do we have anything outside?
No, not here yet.
The rain is coming this way.
We're only getting rain.
Okay. So what I see, I'm going to come back to you, better define some of these uses, strike motor vehicle sales, clean up the retail references, clean up the recreational uses, removing the court sports facility, restaurant, and those types of things. And then that would be it, fixing this misspelling in the definitions.
Please. That's not right.
I didn't write that, by the way.
They invented spell check, and no one has yet to find the button.
EPR is as UVA grads. Thanks for sitting through that. Hopefully it wasn't too painful.
Any further discussion and comments?
Thank you, sir.
Now I'll ask the question I asked earlier. Do I
I have a motion to adjourn.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.